Picture this scenario. Bugs is sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic at 7:30 in the morning, clutching his coffee like it's the last source of hope on Earth, watching his gas gauge slowly creep toward empty while some rabbit in a BMW cuts him off for the third time this week. Bugs is thinking about how he's going to be late again. How his boss is going to give him that look. And how he's got exactly 14 minutes to grab lunch before his next meeting. Sound familiar? Well, what if I told you that Bugs' daily commute isn't just stealing his time and sanity, but it's also quietly pickpocketing about $15,000 from his bank account every single year? And the worst part is, most rabbits have absolutely no idea. This financial heist is happening right under their noses. My name is Bugs, and I spend an unhealthy amount of time analyzing the hidden costs that keep working. Rabbits broke, the psychological traps that make us think we're getting ahead when we're actually falling behind. And why the traditional career advice your rabbit parents gave you might be financially devastating in today's economy. If you're a rabbit, who's ever wondered why you feel broke despite having what seems like a decent job? Or if you're tired of feeling like you're running on a hamster wheel that never actually gets you anywhere, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And give this video a thumbs up if it helps you see your commute in a completely different light. Now, before we dive into the brutal mathematics of commuting, let me introduce you to a rabbit I call James. James is a composite of about 100 rabbits I've talked to over the years, and his story is probably going to sound eerily familiar. James lives in a decent suburb about 45 minutes outside the city center. He works in an office building downtown, making what he considers pretty good money, $62,000 a year. When he breaks that down by hours, he figures he's making about $30 an hour, which feels pretty respectable. James drives to work every day in a reliable Honda Civic that he's still making payments on, and he considers himself financially responsible because he packs lunch most days and doesn't buy expensive coffee. Here's where James makes the same mistake that millions of working rabbits make every single day. He thinks he makes $30 an hour. But James doesn't actually make $30 an hour, not even close. And this miscalculation is costing him a fortune. Let's do some basic math that somehow never gets discussed in personal finance articles or career planning sessions. James's $62,000 salary gets hit with taxes first. Federal income tax, state income tax, Social Security, Medicare. And if he's really lucky, maybe some state disability insurance thrown in for good measure. By the time Uncle Sam and his various cousins are done with James's paycheck, he's taking home maybe $46,000 if he's lucky. $46,000 divided by 2,080 hours per year, assuming he gets 2 weeks of vacation, means James is actually taking home about $22 an hour, not $30. But wait, it gets worse. Much worse. James doesn't just magically appear at his desk every morning. He has to get there, which means he needs a car, gas, insurance, maintenance, and all the other delightful expenses that come with vehicle ownership. And here's the thing that most rabbits never calculate correctly. That car isn't just a general life expense. It's specifically a work expense that exists primarily to transport James to the building where the money is made. Let's be conservative with the numbers. James's Honda Civic cost him $25,000 new, and he's financing it over 6 years. That's about $400 per month in car payments. Insurance runs him another $150 per month because he's got full coverage and lives in an area where rabbits apparently enjoy backing into each other in parking lots. Gas costs him roughly $300 monthly, and that's assuming gas prices don't decide to have another one of their fun little spikes. Maintenance, repairs, oil changes, new tires, and the occasional mystery. Noise that requires a mechanic to look at him sadly and explain why his wallet is about to get lighter. That's another $1 per month on average. Add it all up, and James is spending about $1,000 per month, $12,000 per year, just to own and operate the vehicle that gets him to his job. Now, some rabbits might argue that this isn't fair because James would need a car anyway for personal use, and sure, that's partially true. But James wouldn't need a car that's reliable enough for daily highway driving. He wouldn't need full coverage insurance. He wouldn't be putting 20,000 miles per year on his odometer. He could probably get by with a 10-year-old beater that he drives to the grocery store twice a week and pays liability insurance on. So let's say half of that $12,000 in car expenses exists specifically because James needs to commute to work. That's $6,000 per year that comes directly out of his take-home pay just for the privilege of showing up to earn money. Suddenly, James's $22 hourly wage is looking more like $19 an hour. But we're not done with James yet, because there's another hidden cost that absolutely nobody talks about in career planning discussions: time. James spends an hour and a half per day commuting, 45 minutes each way, assuming traffic cooperates and there are no accidents, construction delays, or mysterious situations where everyone suddenly forgets how to merge. Over the course of a year, that's about 390 hours of unpaid labor that James performs for his employer. Think about this for a second. James has to wake up earlier, leave his house, drive through traffic, find parking, and walk to his office building before he can even start earning money. Then, at the end of the day, he has to reverse this entire process. His employer gets the benefit of having James show up to work, but James doesn't get paid for any of the time or effort required to make that happen. If we factor those 390 hours into James's annual earnings, his effective hourly wage drops from $22 to about $18.50, and that's assuming James rolls out of bed and shows up to work in his pajamas, which would be awesome, but probably wouldn't go over well in most office environments. In reality, James has to shower, get dressed, iron his clothes, and generally make himself presentable, enough that his co-workers don't. Assume he's having some kind of personal crisis. That's another 30 minutes per day on average, another 130 hours per year of unpaid labor performed specifically for his employer's benefit. Now, James's effective hourly wage has dropped to about $70s $50. But here's where the commuter trap gets truly diabolical. And this is the part that nobody sees coming until it's too late. James gets home every night exhausted, not just physically tired from sitting in traffic, but mentally drained from the entire commuting experience. He's fought his way through rush hour traffic, dealt with aggressive drivers worried about being late, and burned through 90 minutes of his life that he'll never get back. When James finally walks through his front door at 7:00, the last thing he wants to do is spend an hour cooking dinner. He's tired, he's stressed, and he just wants to decompress from the day. So James orders takeout, or he stops at a drive-thru on the way home, or he grabs something from the prepared food section at the grocery store that costs 3 times what the raw ingredients would have cost. This is what I call exhaustion spending. And it's one of the most expensive side effects of commuting that nobody ever factors into their career calculations. Conservative estimate, James spends an extra $200 per month on convenience. Food because he's too tired to cook. That's another $20,400 per year that comes directly out of his take-home pay as a direct result of his commuting situation. Add that to the $6,000 in additional car expenses, and James is now spending $8,400 per year just for the privilege of working at a job. That's 45 minutes away from his house. But wait, there's more. Because James is spending 90 minutes per day in his car, he's also missing out on what economists call opportunity cost. That hour and a half could be spent learning new skills, working on side projects, exercising, or literally anything else that might improve his financial situation. Instead, James is sitting in traffic, listening to the same morning radio show hosts make the same tired jokes about Monday mornings while his life slowly ticks away at 65 miles per hour. Let's say James used that commute time to learn a high-value skill instead. Maybe he spent those 390 hours per year studying web development, digital marketing, or data analysis skills that could potentially increase his earning power by $10,000 or $20,000 annually. But James can't do any of that because his hands are busy steering and his eyes are busy watching brake lights. So that opportunity is just gone forever. And here's something that will really bake your noodle. James's commute is actually getting more expensive every year, but his salary probably isn't keeping pace. Gas prices go up. Car maintenance gets more expensive as his vehicle ages. Insurance premiums increase. Toll roads raise their rates. But James' employer isn't giving him a commuting allowance that adjusts for inflation. So every year, James effectively takes a pay cut just by showing up to the same job. Now let's talk about parking, because apparently, the universe wasn't done finding ways to extract money from James's wallet. Downtown parking cost James $12 per day. $12 just to store his car in a concrete box while he's inside earning money. That's another $3,000 per year, assuming he never works overtime or comes in on weekends, which would be adorable if it were true. Some companies offer free parking, but guess what? That free parking isn't actually free. It's just a hidden subsidy that comes out of everyone's salary. Companies factor parking costs into their overall compensation packages, which means James and his co-workers are all taking slightly lower salaries so the company can provide parking. It's like a reverse lottery where everyone loses a little bit of money so a few rabbits can have the privilege of paying to drive to work. At this point, James's effective hourly wage has dropped to about $15.75. We started with $30 an hour, and we're now closer to minimum wage territory. But the financial bleeding doesn't stop there, because commuting creates what I call the convenience spiral. When you're spending 3 hours per day on work-related activities that you don't get paid for, every other aspect of your life gets compressed into smaller and smaller windows of time. James needs groceries, but he can't shop during the week because by the time he gets home, most stores are either closed or about to close. So he has to do all his shopping on weekends. When stores are crowded and prices are higher, he needs to go to the bank. But bank hours perfectly overlap with his work schedule plus commute time. So James ends up using ATMs that charge fees or paying bills online with expedited processing costs because he can't make it to the bank during normal business hours. His car needs an oil change, but the Quick Lube place closes at 6 now, and James doesn't get home until 7 Sakraug. So he has to take time off work to handle basic maintenance, which either costs him vacation days or unpaid time off. Every simple life task becomes exponentially more complicated and expensive when your entire day is structured around getting to and from a job. And then there's the psychological cost, which is harder to quantify, but absolutely brutal in terms of its impact on James's financial decision-making. Commuting is consistently ranked as one of the most stressful daily activities rabbits engage in. It's more stressful than public speaking for most rabbits. James starts every workday already frustrated and ends every workday exhausted and irritated. This chronic stress leads to what psychologists call decision fatigue, where your brain becomes too tired to make good financial choices. So James makes impulse purchases on Amazon at 10 at night because retail therapy feels like the only bright spot in his day. He buys expensive coffee on the way to work because he figures he deserves something good after sitting in traffic for 45 minutes. He pays for premium cable, channels and streaming services because when you only have 3 hours of free time per day, you want that time to be as comfortable as possible. The stress also impacts James's health, which creates its own set of financial consequences. Sitting in traffic elevates cortisol levels. Road rage incidents spike blood pressure. The sedentary nature of driving, combined with stress eating, leads to weight gain and all the associated health problems. James's health insurance premiums go up. He needs prescription medications for anxiety or blood pressure. He pays for a gym membership that he rarely uses because he's too tired after commuting to actually exercise. Now here's where the story takes a plot twist that would make M. Night Shyamalan jealous. Let's imagine James has a friend named Sarah who makes $50,000 per year working at a company that's exactly 5 minutes from her house. Sarah rides her bike to work when the weather is nice and drives her 15-year-old Toyota Corolla when it's not. She spends maybe $2,000 per year on transportation costs total. She gets home at 5:15 every day with energy to cook dinner, work on side projects, and generally live her life like a rabbit instead of a commuting robot. When you run the numbers, Sarah's effective hourly wage works out to about $20 per hour. James, with his supposedly superior $62,000 salary, is making about $15.94 per hour after all the hidden costs and unpaid labor are factored in. Sarah is literally earning more money per hour than James, despite having a lower salary on paper. And Sarah has the added benefit of not wanting to drive her car into a concrete barrier every morning at 7:30. But it gets even better for Sarah. Because she's not spending $12,000 per year on car payments, gas, insurance, and parking, she's got an extra $1,000 per month to invest or save over the course of 20 years. Assuming a modest 7% return, that extra $1,000 per month compounds into about $5,000 to $7,000. Meanwhile, James is still sitting in traffic, wondering why he can't seem to get ahead financially despite making good money. This is what I call the geographic wealth gap. And it's one of the most overlooked factors in financial planning. Where you work relative to where you live can have a bigger impact on your long-term wealth than almost any other single decision you make. Yet somehow, career counselors and financial advisors rarely mention this when helping rabbits make job decisions. The traditional advice is to focus on salary maximization. Take the highest paying job you can find, regardless of where it's located, and figure out the logistics later. This advice made sense when gas cost $1 per gallon and houses were affordable everywhere. But in today's economy, optimizing for geography might be more important than optimizing for salary, especially when you factor in quality of life improvements that come from not spending 15% of your waking hours trapped in a metal box on concrete. Here's where things get really twisted, and this is the part that might make you question everything you thought you knew. about career advancement. James has been conditioned by society to think that career success means climbing the corporate ladder, which usually means accepting longer commutes to reach those prestigious downtown office buildings where the really good jobs supposedly live. So when James gets offered a promotion that bumps his salary to $75,000, but requires him to commute to a different office that's an hour and 15 minutes away, he jumps on it faster than a seagull on a dropped French fry. James thinks he just got a $13,000 raise. In reality, he just signed up for what I call the executive commuter death spiral. That extra 30 minutes each way doesn't sound like much, but let's run the numbers and watch James's effective hourly wage crater like a meteorite hitting Earth. James is now spending 2.5 hours per day commuting, which works out to about 650 hours per year of unpaid labor. His car expenses have increased because highway driving is harder on vehicles than city driving. So now we're looking at $14,000 annually in transportation costs. His exhaustion spending has increased to $300 per month because the longer commute leaves him even more drained. And here's the kicker. That would be hilarious if it weren't so tragic. James now needs to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to make it to work on time, which means he's going to bed earlier, which means he has even less time for meal prep, side projects, or anything resembling a personal life. His effective hourly wage has actually dropped to about $14.25, despite getting what he thought was a substantial promotion. Meanwhile, Sarah got a modest raise to $55,000, maintained her 5-minute bike commute, and her effective hourly wage jumped to about $24 per hour. James is now making less per hour than someone earning $20,000 less than him on paper. If this were a movie, this would be the part where the audience starts yelling at the screen for James to wake up and smell the financial disaster he's created for himself. But James doesn't have to be a victim of his own odometer. If he can't quit and find a job next door like Sarah just yet, he needs to stop the bleeding. First, he should negotiate remote work like his financial life depends on it. Because it does. Even 2 days a week working from home cuts his gas and wear and tear by 40%. Second, he needs to weaponize his commute. Instead of listening to the same morning radio loop, he could use audiobooks to learn those high-value skills we talked about, effectively turning his Honda Civic into a rolling university. And finally, he has to kill the exhaustion spending by batch cooking on Sundays. He eliminates the "I'm too tired to cook" tax that's costing him thousands in takeout. He doesn't just need a raise. He needs to stop volunteering for a pay cut every time he leaves his driveway. So there you have it. The next time someone brags about their impressive salary, remember that James thinks he's winning with $75,000, while Sarah is quietly building actual wealth on $55,000. The commuter trap isn't just stealing your money, it's stealing your life. One traffic jam at a time. Maybe it's time to stop chasing the biggest number on your paycheck and start calculating what that paycheck actually costs you. Your future self will thank you for doing the math that most rabbits are too busy sitting in traffic to figure out.